Namaste and welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into a truly profound framework of thought. It's derived from the Ichapurdi Darshan, which translates to the philosophy of fulfillment, and the teachings of the Vishwadharma Sangam. We are going to be exploring a pretty fascinating philosophical journey together. It starts at the absolute most intimate level of self-discovery, and then it expands all the way out to global unity. By breaking down these original texts and concepts, we'll see exactly how ancient wisdom attempts to solve our modern everyday struggles. All right, let's dive right in. Who am I? I mean, it's the ultimate existential hook, isn't it? Well, this philosophy begins exactly here. It drops us straight into the core of an 11-question Shastrarth. And if you're not familiar, a Shastrarth is basically a deep, analytical dialogue or debate aimed at uncovering the truth. The logic is simple. Before we can figure out what we want out of life, or, how to fix the world, we have to establish who is actually doing the living in the first place. And that brings us to the first major sutra, or truth, offered in the text. I am not the body, I am the consciousness using the body. What's so fascinating about this is how it completely separates the physical from the experiential. The philosophy argues that the body is just a part of nature. It's temporary, it constantly changes. But your true identity? That is the observing consciousness. The I is simply the witness to all these changes. Truly grasping this distinction is the absolute starting point of all real knowledge here. So once we know who we are, the very next question naturally pops up. What is desire, and why do we feel it? Moving Socratic style into our next concept, the texts offer a really sharp insight. Desire isn't just random greed. The feeling of lack, the absence of something, whether that's an object, a situation, or an experience, is the true birthplace of all desires. Basically, we want things because we feel incomplete. Now, the source material brilliantly categorizes these desires into two distinct buckets. On one side, we have natural desires. We're talking things like hunger, thirst, sleep, basic security. These are biologically limited. Once you eat, you're not hungry anymore, right? But on the other side, we have mental desires, the craving for wealth, power, prestige, fame. See the contrast there? Natural desires sustain life, but mental desires, they're completely limitless. And the text warns us that an uncontrolled mental desire very quickly becomes a cage. I want you to take a second and reflect on your own unfulfilled goals. Come on, we all have them. So why do our desires so often remain unfulfilled? If desiring things is natural, why is actual fulfillment so rare? Well, the philosophy doesn't just leave this as some mystical mystery. It breaks down the highly practical, real-world reasons why we fall short. It turns out our desires remain incomplete because of a few fundamental pitfalls. Maybe our goals are unclear, our knowledge is incomplete, our effort is insufficient, or we're just plain ignoring the laws of nature and time. The logic here is beautifully simple, honestly. Where the foundational causes are incomplete, the final result is naturally going to fall short. It's not bad luck, it's just a misalignment of our actions. Which brings us to a critical pivot point. If unlimited, misaligned desires just lead to failure and frustration, how do we fix it? How can we refine what we want? What does a right or pure desire actually look like according to this framework? The answer they give is incredibly profound. The highest desire is one that brings welfare to both the self and the universe simultaneously. A true, correct desire aligns perfectly with truth. It doesn't harm anyone else, it respects the natural world, and it isn't driven purely by selfish gain. The idea is that by elevating what we want, we actually elevate the quality of our entire life. Okay, moving into section 2, life, success, and thoughts. This is all about our inner architecture. The mechanics of human destiny follow this brilliant step-by-step sequence. The text states that thoughts are the seeds of the future. Think about it like a domino effect. A thought creates a feeling. That feeling drives an action. Repeated actions form our habits. Those habits build our character, and ultimately, our character dictates our entire destiny. If you want to change your life, you literally have to trace it all the way back to that very first thought. As you think, so you become. Because of this domino effect, the philosophy completely redefines what it means to win. True success is a state of inner balance, not just external achievement. Being successful isn't merely about hoarding wealth. According to the text, a truly successful person is someone who possesses a peaceful mind, an uplifted society, a happy family, and a deeply satisfied soul. Success is an internal state of being, not an external trophy you put on a shelf. Section 3, the true nature of religion. Now we're moving from the self outward to society. The core message here is stark but true. The world is inherently one big family, but human selfishness and ego have completely fractured our society. In this view, the role of universal religion, or dharma, isn't to divide us up into competing teams. Instead, it acts as the glue. It's meant to rebuild humanity through eternal love and coexistence. You're basically looking at two totally different ways to exist here. On one side, you have an artificial life. This is driven by animalistic ego, that whole illusion of me and mine, and that inevitably leads to conflict, jealousy, and downfall. But on the other side is natural religion. This is based on the purity of the inner conscience and self-knowledge. When you live in this natural state, it automatically yields compassion, forgiveness, nonviolence, and ultimately the realization that we really are a global family. Let's move to section 4, tools for self-awakening. This is where we get into the highly practical path. The sources introduce this really powerful diagnostic tool called the Atmavlokan chakra, or the cycle of self-reflection. It outlines 5 cascading signs that tell you you've stepped away from a natural lifestyle. They are physical illness from unnatural habits, family conflict driven by selfishness, social disgrace, a constant inner fear of being exposed, and a heavy spiritual guilt. If these things are present in your life, the system is just out of balance. So, how do we correct that imbalance? The philosophy presents a definitive turning point. Atmavlokan, which is deep self-reflection, coupled with vidya, which means true knowledge. The text makes it crystal clear, just going through the motions with external rituals, or just singing and chanting, that's simply not enough. True purification happens automatically when vidya awakens in you, allowing you to finally distinguish between what is eternal and what is just temporary. And here is the core meditative practice to achieve that: the breath sumiran. It works kind of like an infinity loop centered on the natural sound of breathing, so hum. Inhaling so brings in Shiva, representing pure consciousness and light. Exhaling hum connects us with Mata, representing nature and the physical elements. This isn't about chanting a specific deity's name. It's about observing the natural rhythm of life itself. You're literally bridging the entire universe with your physical body in a single breath. Now, when that breath practice really deepens, it activates what the sources call the Mahajagaran chakra, the Great Awakening. Imagine it as a ripple effect, starting from the center and moving outward. It starts deep inside with that so-hum breath, purifying the mind. That radiates outward into vidya, or clear knowledge. Then that knowledge manifests in your daily life as dharma, compassion, and justice. And finally, the ripple reaches the absolute edge, total unity, where the selfish I completely dissolves into the universal we. And that brings us to section 5, Vasudeva Kutumbakam. This is the ultimate goal. To sustain this incredible vision, the movement relies heavily on texts like the Sri Vishvadeva Chalisa. But what's vital to understand is that the organizers don't just view this as a standard religious prayer. They see it as a complete scientific and spiritual manual. It's designed to continuously remind the practitioner of their cosmic duty, basically hardwiring human life directly to universal consciousness. And listen, this isn't just theoretical philosophy meant for a monastery. It is a highly active, boots-on-the-ground social movement. The National Religious Unity Yagya is all about real-world application. We're talking organizing village meetings, healing broken families, and actively spreading a message of equality and coexistence. It's taking the inner peace we just talked about and aggressively projecting it out into a fractured society. Bringing it all back home to the 11th and final sutra of the original Shastrarth. The entire path to true fulfillment is summarized in these 3 simple steps. It requires absolute clarity of your resolution, followed by righteous, continuous effort, which then inevitably leads to ultimate success. Fulfillment isn't about acquiring more stuff. It's about deeply understanding yourself, aligning with nature, and respecting the laws of karma. So, I want to leave you with this lingering and honestly pretty provocative thought. Do your personal desires right now align with ultimate truth and the welfare of the entire universe? This whole framework is asking us to stop and evaluate the very seeds of our actions. Are we just blindly surviving, constantly chasing limitless mental desires? Or are we truly awakening? Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the philosophy of fulfillment. Until next time, keep questioning and keep learning.